Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Apprenticeship, a Viable and Valuable Solution to Teacher Shortages in Maryland. My name is Latifa Durant. I'm the VP of Innovation at CityWorks, and I'm thrilled to have you join us this afternoon. In just a moment, you'll hear from all of our wonderful panelists as they share with you their vision for the future of teacher apprenticeship here in Maryland. Just as a bit of background, this summer we convened a teacher apprenticeship work group here in Maryland that was comprised of 6 LEAs, as well as the Department of Labor, as well as the Maryland State Department of Education, to design a teacher apprenticeship that starts in high school. And so the work group really was brought together to design and build a robust pathway for Maryland high school students to become Maryland teachers. In developing a teacher apprenticeship program that starts in high school, it supports both Pillar 2, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders, and Pillar 3, college and career readiness under the state's blueprint. And so it's our goal that through engaging career-connected college coursework and paid work experiences starting in high school, our students will be able to increase their interest in teaching, and we're going to develop our students' college and workforce readiness and build a pathway into the teaching profession here in Maryland. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'd like each of our panelists, if they could give us their name, their title, their organization. And in addition to sharing your name, title, and organization, if you could also share, why are high school student apprenticeships programs, why are they a valuable workforce solution? We can start, the first person on my screen here is Gary. So we'll start with you.
Thank you, Latifa. Gary Willow, Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Washington County Public Schools. And I think, not just with teacher, but apprenticeships in general at the high school are extremely important because I think, again, it goes along with what our students are learning in the classrooms, getting that real world work experience. I think it gets them excited to learn about the different career paths. And in particular, I think for teacher apprenticeship, it's exciting because they get the opportunity to work with students and really get, do I like this? Is this something I see myself doing? And it complements the coursework that they're receiving in the Teacher Academy program.
Thank you, Gary. Amy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Rock, and I serve as one of the instructional supervisors with Career and Technical Education in Prince George's County Public Schools. And apprenticeship near and dear to my heart. And the biggest reason why I think this is so important, not just as Gary said, for teachers, but across all of the apprenticeship fields, is that summer melt. Anybody who works in education knows that there is that phenomenon that happens after graduation of the summer melt, where students have plans, at least in their heads, of what they want to do after they graduate from high school, whether that be go to the workforce, the military, onto college and university. And something happens from that graduation date until that enrollment date in whatever they had said they were going to do, that we call summer melt. And so even with the best of intentions, a lot of times students don't make it to that next step. And so a school to work apprenticeship model bridges that gap. It takes away that gap of time between graduation and starting because you've already started, and it just is a continuation. And so I think it's a very valuable tool to help our students stay on track, to have a focus, to have a path to a meaningful and successful career that's going to allow them to stay within our communities and earn a living wage or better.
Thank you, Amy. Logan, and then I will turn it over to you, Tracy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here. Logan Dean, I'm Program Manager for Apprenticeship and Training at the Maryland Department of Labor. Myself and my team are responsible for safeguarding the health and safety of Maryland's apprentices and promoting and growing apprenticeship here in the state. We have about 12,000 apprentices across Maryland and another 1,000 high school students who are participating in the AMP program, which is the Apprenticeship Maryland program, which is our high school initiative for apprenticeship. I think that teacher apprenticeship opportunities are particularly important, and it's a particularly powerful pathway because apprenticeship is a job from day one. You start as a worker, you start as an employee, and you're learning the position as you progress through the training. So I think that the model of training teachers has moved very far to higher education, and that's made the profession, advance in a lot of ways. But what it's done is put the degree first and the experience second, and move that work portion to much later in your career. And so what apprenticeship does is it helps kind of shift that model back to a place where the experience of working in a classroom, working as a teacher, is front and center to your introduction to the profession. And what it does is it allows you to start earning earlier. So you're not, having that opportunity cost of foregoing a job, foregoing an income, and then having to pay out of pocket, or potentially taking loans for a college degree. So it really kind of brings that pathway back to a whole group of people and students and young people who maybe thought that they could never afford to go into teaching or afford to go to college because they can recenter the work portion of their training earlier. So I think that's a huge, huge value to what we can provide.
Beautifully said, Logan. Tracy Kittle, Director of Apprenticeships and Industry Recognized Credentials at the Maryland State Department of Education. Just to echo what the fellow panelists have already stated, that it really allows our young people to have a unique pathway for economic mobility, that they're able to explore earlier in their career, why they may or may not like a particular position or particular field. So they're going into the world of work more informed and more experienced. It does give them those opportunities to earn industry recognized credentials before they leave, while having access to a caring adult, which for anyone who does this work often, we know that you can never over strategize for good people, right? And a lot of the times it's the people who are moving the work with our young people. And so I think that's a huge advantage. For employers, the piece I would add, and I often will say that our public schools are our nation's greatest supplier of talent, that there is no other pipeline year after year that produces fresh talent in the way that a school system does. And so anyone who is responsible for managing their talent pipeline and who has an interest in workforce development should also have an interest in be paying close attention to school enrollments, especially when they're declining, because of course we know that results in fewer young people in our workforce. And so we like to say in Maryland that our apprenticeship is the gold standard for really finding that warm handoff between K-12 and the post-secondary world. It's really an early recruitment strategy, and it provides the best enabling conditions for a really strong collaboration between schools, community, colleges, businesses, nonprofits, local and state economic development agencies to really just ensure we're working together to build a resilient and a competitive workforce for the state of Maryland.
Thank you. I appreciate each of the panelists introducing yourselves, as well as your initial thoughts on why apprenticeship programs are a valuable workforce solution. For those who have just tuned into the webinar, thank you so much for joining us. The webinar is being recorded so that we can share this at a later time with others who weren't able to attend as it was being recorded and shared. In addition, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will try to get to your questions throughout the webinar, or at the very least, we will come to them at the end to make sure we can get your thoughts, feedback, and questions answered. My first question is actually to Amy and Gary. How does your LEA, how does your school district specifically aim to utilize the high school teacher apprenticeship program to meet your district's needs?
Okay, I was going to let Gary go first, but okay. Prince George's County, we are a large district, and year over year, in the years that I've been with Prince George's County, we have hundreds of vacancies every year at the paraprofessional level, at the teacher level, year over year. So it is a continuous struggle for us to meet the demand for teachers in our district. That's the bottom line, right? That is the first order of why we are interested in moving forward with this. And specifically with that, what we are looking at is we have pieces. We have pieces in place, but we don't have the connector. So we have the Teacher Academy of Maryland program. We have the CDA program where teachers can earn a credential. They can earn their parapro, they can earn their CDA, which would allow them into the workforce. And then we have, if you are currently a para with our district, we have a tuition reimbursement where you can train to become a teacher. So we're like, how do we bridge the gap amongst those two things to create an apprenticeship that, again, is seamless so that a young person who is interested in the teaching profession starts in high school, gathers experience while they are in high school as an employee, earns their credential, and then works for us full time, gets their college education, and comes back as a full-time teacher. Where this is particularly of interest to me personally with teacher education is I did not go to teacher school. Okay. I do not have that education background. It was on the job. And those first couple years of teaching were hard, right? It was hard. I had an excellent mentor group around me to support me and teach me the pedagogy and teach me how to teach. I knew content, but I didn't know education. And so through an apprenticeship program, that's 5 years of education experience in a classroom for a young person. When they graduate from college, they are ready. They have had a mentor. They have had somebody who to help train them, walk them through all that is education beyond the paper pencil or computer today. And for us in particular, it is recruitment of students who match our demographics. And so we know we have not only just a teacher shortage, but a shortage of bilingual teachers, a shortage of Hispanic teachers. It's a growing population in our district. And so we want to be able to recruit our own, keep them here, and have them be members of our society, members of our community who continue to live and work in Prince George's County.
Well, thank you, Amy, for that. I would echo a lot of what Amy shared. I'm going to highlight one thing that maybe to add to that. We started our apprenticeship program for teachers based on some of the research that Educators Rising put out. 60% of teachers tend to teach within 20 miles where they grew up, right? So that's pretty powerful. And when you go back and you talk to teachers, there's another research piece that most in ninth grade, freshman year, didn't know they wanted to be teachers. But they had made the decision by the time their senior year in high school. I think 2/3 left knowing that they were going to be teachers. So it just makes sense, right? Like they're choosing to teach close to where they grew up, and they're making the decision in high school. So what are we doing to capitalize off of that, right? And I know we have the TAM program, which is Teaching Academy of Maryland, which is a great CTE program, but that's not in every high school for us, right? Again, just based on enrollment needs, we can't run every CTE program in every high school. But there are students interested. So we began to think about how can we capture that interest? And we think most teachers tend to go into teaching because they love working with students. And a little later on, I know I'll have an opportunity to talk about our apprenticeship program, but part of that was how do we capture that magic of helping students, letting them help other students, right? Because I think that's what partially gets you hooked into wanting to teach. So part of what we see with high school is a win-win. Starting in high school, it aligns with the blueprint and Pillar 3 and dual credit. And the fact that we're already covering costs for dual credit courses while they're in high school, how can we put a pathway together where we can get them excited about teaching? Because we think, honestly, part of that teacher shortage is how we have not always been, and I'm talking about WCPS, effective in recruiting and really growing our own. So that's why we got into this work about 2 years ago.
Thank you, Amy and Gary. And before I go into the next question, I realize that sometimes we have educators speak, so I want to try to maybe unpack a few terms. It's neither one of you. It's just I'm sitting here thinking about kind of the audience for today's conversation. And so maybe I want to just maybe define a few terms that were mentioned by Gary and Amy. And if we share anything or say anything that you're like, what is that? Feel free to put that in the Q&A and we will make sure we address that. as well. So you might have heard references to CTE, which is also Career and Technical Education. Those are programs of study, courses that are offered in the high school setting where students are able to explore a particular career field, a particular occupation while they're in high school. I think a lot of folks typically think of career and technical education, CTE, as perhaps your construction trade courses. But as you heard Gary and Amy mention, we also have a teacher CTE program called TAM, the Teacher Academy of Maryland. There's IT CTE programs, there's nursing and healthcare and engineering. There is a huge array of career and technical education programs that are giving our young people exposure to various careers and industry while they're in high school. And in that process, they're earning industry certifications. One of the certifications you heard Amy mention is the CDA, and Parapro is another. So CDA is that Child Development Associate credential, which allows you to work in an early child care setting, or the Paraprofessional Certificate, which allows you to get certified as a paraprofessional and work in schools. In addition, I think there was perhaps some references to dual credit. Dual credit is when a young person is taking a college course while they're in high school, and they're getting dual credit. They're getting credit for that course, both at the college and at the high school. So again, feel free as we share any thoughts or terms that may be unfamiliar to you, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we're glad to make sure that we clarify those for your understanding. I want to shift to Logan and Tracy. Businesses and organizations in our local and regional communities, they can really benefit from this innovative workforce development solution, apprenticeship. What do you see as the biggest selling points for apprenticeship for school districts and beyond in other industries as well?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think one of the biggest selling points, especially like it really ties into like what Amy was talking about with just the hiring need, the vacancies, the big challenges that education is facing. Apprenticeship lets you normalize your recruitment and build pipelines that help fill some of those vacancies along the way. When you're an apprentice, you're not serving as like a teacher of record. You're not going to start in your first day and be like leading a classroom. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of experience that goes into being an apprentice and learning it that way. But what you can do along the way is you gradually progress through all the other functions of the classroom. That's how apprenticeship is delivered. That's how your instruction happens. So what that allows you to do is fulfill some of those functions of what a para might do, what an instructional assistant might do, what a teaching assistant might do. So if you're thinking about it from an employer perspective, from the district, if you can have a teacher apprentice who's going to be with you for maybe 4, 5, 6 years to get all the way to be like a licensed teacher, during those 5 years, you now have an employee who can fill those vacancies for teaching assistants, paras, these other positions that are crucial to the classroom, crucial to the environment. You can now fill with somebody who's on the pipeline to becoming a teacher. So that's the whole kind of grow your own philosophy of apprenticeship. And that's a big thing in the education space right now is the whole grow your own center and grow your own movement. But that's really what that is using apprenticeship as your tool to establish the pipeline. So you're not only providing the opportunity and the ladder, but you're also meeting your current needs in a more immediate term than trying to, constantly refill and search for these vacancies throughout your organization.
In addition to what Logan just shared, I think broadly speaking, businesses can also benefit because broadly speaking, they can supplement their expenses when they partner through an apprenticeship model because the related instruction can be done for free through our CTE programs, as Latifa described, or at the local community college. And so that's certainly a selling point. I think businesses also have a lot of autonomy and access to how they're training their new hires and who is training them. So I think that's an advantage. And then the businesses more broadly also have a teammate, we like to say, through our AMP coordinators. So these are individuals at the school who, at the school level or the district level, who help coordinate the apprenticeship arrangement, but they're also there as an accountability buddy. So they can help you with any thought partnership or problem solving that's available. I think having that extra caring adult there to support you in the work with the young people has always been an advantage that our businesses have appreciated. On a teacher apprenticeship lens, as Amy mentioned, we need teachers across the state. They're absolutely a priority. And I think one of the benefits that school districts have appreciated is that they're able to braid their funds and their strategies kind of through existing residency programs, which is sort of what Latifa and Logan, I think we're getting to. That helps us cut a lot of the barriers that we see with traditional student teaching models, because we're able, through the teacher apprenticeship model, to kind of create different on-ramps with this sort of progressive wage schedule that does, again, cut through a lot of those barriers. I think it also, especially for our younger generation, it creates a lifestyle flexibility that we don't currently have with the existing model that I know that they really appreciate. It opens up more doors to a more diverse teaching force as well. And then, just as I mentioned earlier, really promotes sort of this intentional decision making on behalf of both the student and the school district, which, as we know, is really important for retention purposes. And so that's all that I would probably add to what has already been shared.
Thank you, Logan and Tracy. I really appreciate your insights on how apprenticeships can be helpful and useful to districts in addressing the teacher shortages. Gary, in Washington County, you all have been doing some amazing work around youth apprenticeship, and in particular, educator youth apprenticeship. Would you mind sharing what you all are doing and how it currently works for students? And maybe also share a little bit about how your youth apprenticeship program is a bit different than what we are talking about today and what we're working to develop in terms of a registered apprenticeship program in education.
Absolutely. This will be year 3 of our, we're actually in year 3 right now. We have 35 high school students who are through the Maryland Youth Apprenticeship Program. And the idea was sort of what we went back to, what I shared earlier. How do we get high school students excited about potentially teaching beyond just the coursework that they might experience in high school? And so we also knew that coming out of the pandemic, we had a large need for tutoring at the elementary school. So we actually will hire these 35 students. They work for WCPS. They have part-time schedules during the day. In the morning, they may take some high school classes. Because they're juniors and seniors, they have a little bit more flexibility in their schedule. And in the afternoon, they tutor elementary students, specifically in literacy instruction. And we train them over the summer, just like we do paraprofessionals, reading tutors. They keep track of student progress. They have to keep track of their time through our time card. It was a really cool process, and as we've developed, we've helped with the resumes and the interviews. They will interview with school principals. Principals will choose the tutors that they want for their buildings, and the success. Yes, to those going into wanting more to teach, right? Like these high school students walk into an elementary school and the elementary students' eyes just light up. Like it's not a stigma to go back and work with the high school student in the back of the room. Everybody wants to work with the high school student because they're the high school student. So that's a pretty cool, bring a tear to your eye, like just sort of watching that moment. But also the results of just the work of the elementary tutors has really been powerful. We've had students that no longer require an intervention going into 3rd grade, like reading gap closed. And so it's really been twofold for us, beneficial. We do allow students to take up to 60 college credits in WCPS, and we cover the cost of all 60 credits. And so that has really helped students get a jump start between that and the CTE programming that we talked about. The college credits, some AP courses perhaps sprinkled in. The hope is that with the work that we're doing with this registered apprenticeship group, that some of these students might continue on to what Amy described, or if they go into a traditional setting, we want to keep an eye on them for 2 or 3 years, so we bring them back to us. And so it's really a recruitment retention all in one, meaning that we want them to come back to WCPS after they graduate. And it's been a huge win for our elementary principals and elementary staff to have the extra body in the classroom actually supporting those primary grades around literacy instruction. I did, Latifa, drop in a R1 pager because we're always willing to share. So anybody on the webinar in the chat, you should be able to sort of get an overview of what our program looks like.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Gary. I think especially what you shared about your program being a recruitment and a retention strategy, both the youth apprenticeship program and what we're looking to build in a registered apprenticeship program in education, particularly in light of the statistic you shared at the beginning that 60% of teachers are living, or teaching where they grew up. And so, this is an opportunity for us to build our local talent pipeline, that this isn't just about importing folks from other states or from other parts of the country, but actually being able to develop your homegrown talent and making sure that our young people have the opportunity to build a career and to build a life in the community in which they grew up, that they can be educated there, that they can continue to live there, and that they're able to educate the next generation of young people coming up in their own communities. And so that's just fantastic, Gary. I thank you for sharing that. And even more so, that these young people are making a difference with the current students and closing the gaps that they may have had by providing interventions to the younger students, that having high school students working and being paired with elementary school students, that they are able to be effective. I think there's often misconceptions or misperceptions about our young people and what they're able to do. And so even just sharing what the high school students in Washington County are able to do, it helps to, I say, dispel some of the myths that people have about our high school students, about our young people, that they can contribute in a meaningful way in the workplace, as I'm sure your elementary students and teachers are experiencing. So thank you so much for sharing and for sharing the resource too. Amy, PGCPS currently hires its high school students into a registered apprenticeship program. And so while Gary was sharing with us about his youth apprenticeship program, can you tell us a bit about your registered apprenticeship program? While it's not in education, I think it definitely gives us a window into what's possible when we hire our young people starting in high school. And then also tell us what it's like for an LEA to be a registered apprenticeship sponsor. And Logan, I may ask you to chime in here as well. I know typically our registered apprenticeship sponsors are business and industry folks and unions and things of that nature. But just curious to see what this looks like and feels like for an LEA to be a registered apprenticeship sponsor.
Yeah, and I am going to watch the clock because I will talk to you all day about our registered apprenticeship. So I'll try to be really concise. But I can't ever talk about our registered apprenticeship program without first saying thank you to Latifa. Latifa was working with Prince George's County Public Schools at that time and was the cornerstone of making this work. So always have to give that shout out at the beginning on that. I'm the inheritor of that work. And if you can't see it in my face, I am so proud of this program and so proud of our students and our building services department for making it happen. So what we have is trying to remember what Latifa said too about explaining things. We have what we call a school to work model. So students do begin in high school. They do continue directly from high school they stay with us. There is no lapse. And so they begin in 10th. Well, we bring them in 10th grade into the program. We say, hey, are you interested? This is all in our construction trades for our building services department, because we had a problem with retention, bringing people on. As an LEA, we don't pay electricians as much as private companies. So we don't pay the plumbers. We don't, so trying to get folks in who are skilled to work on our hundreds of buildings and do maintenance and repair and install and all of those things was difficult. It was difficult for our department to do that. And so they came to us, we came to them, and they're like, can we do an apprenticeship? And so our students who are in our construction trades programs are eligible to apply. So they enter into the construction trades programs in 11th grade. At that time, once they complete the first couple prerequisites, they are then eligible to apply for the apprenticeship, and they go to work for Prince George's County Public Schools as employees, as apprentices with our building services department. As an LEA, we were the first in Maryland, the first LEA to kind of hire our own, and it was a learning experience. No, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It was a learning experience for us. Even though we in education are very familiar with regulation, this is a different type of regulation, a different type of oversight, a different type of language to learn with that. And so that was really the biggest challenge, was figuring out the legalities, the logistics, the what is and is not allowable, and keeping the paperwork. It was never the kids, right? So that first group that we had, and Latifa can attest to this as well, we were like little mother hens, right? With our little chicks, leading them through this process because they were going to go work in building services. And there was some reluctance on the part of our building service workers. What do I do with a kid? A kid is going to be in my truck. A kid is going to be on the job. I'm responsible now for a kid. About 2 weeks in, they were like, send me some more kids. They were thrilled with the work ethic, with the excitement, with being able to teach, even though they are not teachers. These are plumbers, electricians, HVAC techs, masons. And they had a little person next to them who wanted to learn from them. And you could see it in their faces and how they carried themselves, that this made such a difference in the morale of our building services people, that somebody now looked up to them. Somebody saw them and what they were teaching them as important. So that was a huge impact, was that change there. And for our students, our first group made it through, right? We've made it through our first group now, and gonna again be totally honest, of the original 6 that we were able to hire on after they graduated, we have 3 left. We have 3 who are full-time employees. All of them have been given promotions. So we have a mason left, we have a head of carpentry shop now, and now a boiler technician who started out as an HVAC apprentice. Of the 3 we lost, none of them left because they did not like the apprenticeship or the trade. One moved out of state. One during COVID switched unions so that he could continue to work because we were closed. And the other, there were some issues around paperwork. I'll just say that. So with that, none of them left because they were fired. None of them left because, they weren't interested in the trade. And so it's incredibly, very much a point of pride for me when I go over there and I can go, that's one of mine. Right, who are still working with us and for us. And so our next sets of apprentices are in the pipeline. They are going through the program now. We've just brought on 2 new ones. The one drawback, I would say, to the model that we use is because we are a single provider, we are a single employer, we can only take a couple at a time, because you don't know how many vacancies you're going to have down the road. So with the teacher apprenticeship, I see that as being a more viable, robust model because there is always such a huge demand. But definitely love the program, love what it's done for our kids, for our adults. And I'm super proud of those young people who are now young adults, full-time employees.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Amy, and about the benefits, the challenges, the successes, and everything in between. It's really helpful to hear from an LEA what it is like to be a registered apprenticeship sponsor. And Logan, I was wondering, for an LEA that might be listening to this webinar, what supports are available at the State Department of Labor to help them to become a registered apprenticeship sponsor, and/or what advice might you give an LEA about becoming a registered apprenticeship sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad Amy talked about some of the difficulties because it can be a process to get started. It is like a different world. If you coming from education, registered apprenticeships history is in construction, it's in workforce development, and it's not always easy to translate all those terms. So one of the services that we provide from the Department of Labor is we have complete navigation, complete assistance available to walk you through the process of building, running, and maintaining an apprenticeship program. So myself and we have a staff of 18 apprenticeship navigators who work all across the state, and they each cover different geographic parts of Maryland. We're here to actually create these programs with you, build them to what your business is doing, what your needs are, and then get you through all of those regulatory processes that get you registered. That's what everyone's going after, is the capital R in registered apprenticeship is the registration. So we can really walk you through that entire process, get your documents put together, build your program, and then help it be set up to run effectively over time. And our services, our navigation doesn't end at your approval. We continue to support programs all throughout their life cycle. Myself and my team, we do technical assistance with apprenticeship programs that have been around since the 1920s. We're still there today, helping them figure out how to do things, how to change with the times, how to update their programs. Beyond just the technical support, there are also certain incentives and grants and funding programs that are available to support apprenticeship as well. On the apprentice side, as far as paying for instruction, when you're talking about something like education, a big part of your training as an apprentice is still going to be through higher education. It's still going to come from colleges, universities, community colleges, which means you have access to things like the Pell Grant, like your merit scholarships and state-funded scholarships that can help reduce some of the employer cost. A lot of districts, like Amy mentioned, are already doing tuition reimbursement or tuition remission for employees. That's another way where you can layer that into the apprenticeship and just kind of fold those costs into what you're already doing. From labor, we operate a couple of programs that are designed to both sustain apprenticeships, reduce some of the employer costs, but also kind of seed the startup of new programs and new initiatives. One that's available right now that was announced by Governor Moore last year during National Apprenticeship Week is called the Public Sector Innovation Fund. And that is a current grant that's funded by a U.S. Department of Labor discretionary grant. And we're going to be operating that through to 2026. And that's open to any public sector entity in the state. So a unit of state, county, or local government, which includes your LEAs, school systems, who wants to develop or expand an apprenticeship. And so what we can offer is essentially kind of seed funding to build that capacity. So things like administrative overhead costs, like curriculum design, instructional materials, those things that are kind of prohibitive at the beginning, we have funding available to help reduce some of those costs now. So it's up to $600,000 per agency, and again through 2026. So that comes from myself and my team, and we can assist you with finding those funds and applying them. And then we have a bunch of different incentives and grants layered throughout there to help reduce that cost for the apprentices over the life of the program. So there's hopefully a lot of financial incentive to build these programs at the moment, but then also, again, our assistance is always available to kind of help you put the pieces together as an employer, as a sponsor.
That's fantastic, Logan. I appreciate you sharing not only the people support, right, the technical assistance, but also the financial support, right? So I can imagine that as LEAs are looking at this webinar, they may be thinking, this is a great idea, this is a great opportunity, but do we have the budget to do it? And so I appreciate you sharing the financial resources that are available, as well as Tracy, you sharing some financial resources that are available for MHEC as well, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, in the chat as well. So if you have additional questions, if you're listening to this webinar live or in the future, please feel free to reach out to both Maryland State Department of Education, Tracy Kittle, Logan Dean at the Department of Labor, as well as those who are sponsoring today's webinar, which is the Maryland Apprenticeship Connector, for guidance and support to help you figure out how to take your next steps to launching your apprenticeship program, whether that be in the teacher space or in another industry or occupation. Tracy, as we're talking about resources that are available at the Department of Labor, what opportunities are available, state and local resources, to support students and to support families as they're pursuing their education through this apprenticeship program?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. I could really just add to what Logan had mentioned around kind of the people and the financial support. So I did throw the links in the chat, which do have some added financial support for students. But I also think at the LEA level, if you're interested in creating a teacher apprenticeship pipeline, or you're interested in pursuing it, the first person you really want to talk to is your Apprenticeship Maryland program coordinator. We call them an AMP coordinator. We have one in every single school district in the state of Maryland. That person is supervised by the CTE director if they aren't also the CTE director. And so you want to find out who that person is. And that person's role is really to connect students to the on-the-job training. They are also going to work with Logan very closely on getting that program approved, getting students placed, signing all the agreements, making sure kind of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. The other really important role that an AMP coordinator plays is they often help shape the school schedule for the student. And that can't be understated enough, just because that person can really help ensure that the student is meeting their high school graduation requirements at the same time that they're also meeting their apprenticeship requirements. And so that's someone who is going to abbreviate the school schedule in some way. We have students that get up at 3 a.m. and go, yes, a high school student who gets up at 3 a.m., who goes to work from 5 to 9 and then goes to school in the afternoon to finish their graduation requirements. You have students who will take classes in the morning and then they will leave work early. And so that apprenticeship coordinator is really important in making sure that students are able to do both. Those folks become really, really important for all kinds of students, whether it's a student who, a lot of times we see that an apprenticeship is the reason that a student graduates from high school. Another, reason we have apprenticeships being the reason that a student graduates from high school with their diploma and their associate's degree. And so apprenticeships are really moving into this 21st century model where, again, they have all these on-ramps and off-ramps. And there's a lot of different kind of tastes that are available for any student who wants to pursue that. And so Latifa, I would just add that in addition to the financial resources, that apprenticeship coordinator at the LEA level is the most important person to speak with.
Thank you for sharing all of that really helpful information, Tracy. It's one thing to design something at the state level. It's something else to feel it and implement it at the local level. What does it feel like for that individual student, that individual family, that individual school scheduler that's trying to make it all work and make it happen so that the young person can get to the place of employment, even if that is working in the elementary school down the street. So thank you for sharing your ideas and resources that are available. For those who are joining us live, we are about 15 minutes out from conclusion. So if you haven't had an opportunity yet, please feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat so we can be able to address those before we sign off today. Amy and Gary, we've heard about the vast teacher shortage across the country, and specifically here, and acutely we feel it in Maryland. And as more and more young people have more and more options available to them, wonderful, amazing options and careers, we're not seeing as many young people going into the teaching profession. And so tell us, what strategies can we implement? What can we do to attract more young people into this career path of education? Why is it a game changer for them? And why is it a game changer for us as educators?
Thank you, Amy. So every year in our career technical education department, we create a yearly plan that allows for some additional federal funding, and it's called the Perkins Grant. But it's a grant that allows us to put funds as early as I think you can occasionally go down to elementary, but if I'm wrong, Tracy's going to correct me, but at least in the middle school. And so one of the things that we've started to do is backwards map with the career coaching in middle school, even to talk about different careers, and one of them focusing on education. And I go back to the initial where I started, and I feel like sometimes I think it's like this with any career. Yeah, you see what you see every day, and then you wonder, man, I don't know if this is for me. And a lot of times we remember maybe the 2 or 3 negative things, but we don't always see all of the positive things that are happening, and those changes that teachers have, a huge impact on students. I mean, research consistently shows the teacher is the greatest indicator of student success in the classroom, right? And so I think what we want to do there is to make sure that we're highlighting all of the positives. And I think, again, to go back to why we started where we did with high school and why we're backwards mapping with career coaching even into middle school, is to get them excited about lots of different career choices. But in our case, we really want to hone in on education. And I think, it goes back. what we found with the tutor apprenticeship program when we talked with our graduates and as we finish each year was that they were just as excited to see student success. Like when you actually help a young student learn how to read, even if they decided not to go into education. Now, some went right into paraprofessionals, and we don't even have that program set up yet, but they're paras for us, and they're taking evening classes, right? Which is fine because we're going to get to that program here soon, Latifa, right? That's going to happen this year for us. But my point is, like, it gets them excited. Like when you go into any career, you want to be excited about what you do. Like, and you also want to feel like you're making a difference. I don't care if that's in the trades, if that's into medicine, education, like you name it, right? Like we want to know we're making a difference. And I think that's the magic, is to work with kids at a younger age to get them excited, but to also see the impact that they have on students. And that's why, we continue to focus because shame on us. I know I go back and again, if that research is accurate, and kids are deciding somewhere between 9th and 10th and 12th grade, about becoming a teacher, then it's really partially on us as LEAs to re-explore how we're looking at getting kids excited about teaching. They can see some of the negatives that are happening every day, right? But they don't know the positives. They don't. So I think it's about showing them more of why we became educators to begin with, and it's more than just a love of content knowledge. It's about helping young students learn the skills they need to be successful in life.
And I'm glad that Gary talked about the idealism. I mean, if we can all kind of go back a little bit in our minds, for some of us, it's longer than others, to high school. I was very idealistic, right? We have that whole change the world and make a difference, right? Attitude about things. And part of it is being able to capture that and show them a very concrete way that you can make a real difference right here. You don't have to travel to Bali, or South America or somewhere to do something that is life changing for someone. You can do it right here, in the way you want to do it. So I think it's important for us to be able to capture that interest and that natural motivation that young people have to make a difference and build on their empathy and their compassion and their desire to do that. At the same time, we can't ignore the fact that we work for money, right? I love teaching. I love education. I don't know that I would change my path, how I ended up where I ended up. But I wouldn't have done it without money, right? I need a paycheck. And so I think that is something too, that a lot of people who would be attracted to education don't go into education because they're like, you want me to invest how much in college and have student loans and have all of this debt and then make how much? Right. So the blueprint is helping there with minimum teacher salary, raising that up to more of a livable wage. And if through an apprenticeship, we can eliminate that debt for people and give them an actual job while they're in college to be able to support themselves, be able to fund their way into retirement systems and such. So I think we have to do kind of that twofold of grab onto that idealism, grab onto that youthfulness, but also be very clear in, we're going to pay for your college. You're going to have some financial stability. You're going to have a stable job. Teachers are not going to be outsourced, right? Your job is still going to be here. And it's consistency. You're going to get a check every 2 weeks. You're going to get a check every 2 weeks. It's not going to be that back and forth. So for somebody who is very risk adverse with my money, this sounds great, right? You're going to pay me, you're going to pay for my college, and I'm going to be getting a job and I'm going to be able to stay in that job. I think that's very attractive to a subset and particularly to those who want to stay local, that this is a way that they can afford to do that. They can make a difference. They can contribute and have a lifestyle that they want to have while staying here.
Thank you.
I appreciate both you and Gary sharing your perspectives, like the opportunity to make a difference, and how that attracts young people to the profession, but also the very real reality of, and you also need income to live. And to your point, Amy, the work that the Blueprint is doing to make and to ensure that our teachers are earning a living wage, that they're able to take care of themselves and their families, and that security that comes with that as well. So thank you both for sharing that. I'm looking to see if we have any new questions in the chat. I don't think so, but we have a lot of resources that you all have provided. In the few minutes that we have left, I would love for each of our panelists to share, what is your hope? What is your vision for the future of teacher apprenticeships in Maryland over the next 5, 10 years? I'll start with Logan or Tracy.
Sure, I can start. So we have, we've done a great work already with just the Apprenticeship Maryland program, with the youth opportunities that are available. We have almost every LEA in the state participating in some fashion as an employer within youth apprenticeship. It is awesome. It's actually our largest employment sector for youth apprenticeship is our public school systems, which is wonderful. And what we want to see is that expand all the way into registered apprenticeship and into these full career pathways like Prince George's County has done. And recently, like St. Mary's County has done. St. Mary's County Public Schools is now the first district in the state to sponsor a teacher apprenticeship program. And that's actually the first teacher registered apprenticeship program in Maryland. So I think that my vision, my goal for the state is that we have all 24 LEAs sponsoring a registered apprenticeship program for teacher, and that we can feed those pathways, those pipelines with the students who are coming out of our TAM programs, our CTE programs, and our Apprenticeship Maryland opportunities. So that's what we'd love to see, and be able to kind of grow the profession and see these, vacancy issues disappear and be a thing of the past.
Typically, since Logan is my work bestie, whether he likes it or not, we usually like the same thing. So what Logan wants, I want. However, I would add to that that I think there's a lot of opportunity for our K through 12 education space to really align with higher education more effectively than it has been through re-envisioning what articulation agreements look like, work-based learning experiences, like apprenticeship, and then also restructuring, as I had mentioned, some of our scholarship funding to really create these sort of seamless pathways that can support students through their teaching careers. And then the other thing I think that I really hope for is that we see more young people being taught by educators who reflect their own identities and backgrounds. I think teacher apprenticeships are an incredible opportunity to do that, but also for there to be sort of a renewed sense of respect and enthusiasm for the teaching profession. I think sometimes people forget that teachers are really the cornerstone of every other industry. And as Gary mentioned, like I'm grateful every day for the person who taught me how to read. Like that changed my life, right? And we think about the fact that like there are CEOs because there were teachers. There are CEOs who were teachers. There are engineers and doctors and mechanics and athletes because there are teachers and coaches and mentors who really lay that foundation for learning and collaboration in the future. So if that could be my wish list, it would probably be just a renewed sense of respect and enthusiasm for teaching.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tracy. Just like that, you said that renewed sense of respect and enthusiasm for the teaching profession. I think certainly this program can help to build that. Amy and Gary, before you guys answer that question, we got a question in the chat. So I want to push pause. And so one of the question here is around what flexibility or what supports are there for students who have immediate needs. So in terms of not about necessarily the financial need of college, but they would maybe like to participate in apprenticeship, but they can't because they have childcare responsibilities at home, or maybe they have transportation concerns of, how are they going to get to the opportunity? And so, Tracy, you see this too in working with districts around the state. And I know you've done a number of work sessions and things like that on these types of barriers. So Tracy, Amy, Gary, like would any of you like to jump in and share, even in your existing programs, how you've been helping and supporting young people to address these types of, life challenges?
I can take a stab at it, and if Amy wants to add or Tracy wants to add in. Feel free, but we work closely. We build partnerships to remove as many barriers as possible. We've got a great group. Our Chamber of Commerce actually provides a really nice scholarship to take care of work-related materials. We use school funds, community school funds, to provide transportation if needed to job sites. So we look at transportation. What other barriers might they need? Do they need special equipment to do that type of job? Then we try to remove that barrier as well. A lot of times too, our businesses will help with that stuff because they see the value in the recruitment piece, right? Like our businesses are getting involved in apprenticeships because uh, they want a future workforce that's ready, and they like the idea of either us training them or them training them depending on the job. So I would say, are there barriers out there? I'm sure there are. It probably looks different depending on each situation, but do not shy away. Reach out to the school counselor or the coordinator for the county that Tracy shared, the apprenticeship coordinator, or even the school administration to find out what supports might be there to eliminate those barriers, because that is one thing between MSDE, the business community, the Department of Labor. Everybody is really trying to make this work. So I think there are solutions out there. Sometimes you just have to start those conversations.
Carrie, I'm
And
going to jump in and, oh,
no, I was just gonna say, I'm gonna give the negative Nelly now to that. Just to be totally realistic, with our own apprenticeship, we tied ourselves in knots trying to find ways to make this accessible for students without transportation. Of going to pick them up at school, and bringing them back and, dropping them off at home and type of things. And we found within our building services apprenticeship that it just, our productivity went down. These guys had work to get done and they couldn't leave a job site to go and drop a kid off back at school, halfway through the workday. And so that really remains a barrier for us with our students. Now, I will say that our students are so ingenious, right? And those who they found ways, they carpooled with each other. They found somebody to get. I had a student who rode an hour each way on the bus each morning and then walked a mile to get to work. With the apprenticeship. So that is not our ideal and that is not what we want to see. So this remains a barrier for us, is that transportation issue with not just our own apprenticeship that we sponsor, but also with students getting into other apprenticeships, which with a teacher apprenticeship would allow us a little more localized, right? Because we have neighborhood schools. You're here, there's 3 elementary schools right near you where you could work, or middle school. So we see that as an option with a teacher apprenticeship of lowering some of those barriers. But we have not fixed that yet. We have not come up with that. So I wrote down, Gary, that your community schools group is helping to pay. So I'm going to be checking with ours to find some ways to deal with that.
I can just add into that too that there is a lot of support available through the public workforce system in Maryland, and people always say it's the best kept secret is like the public workforce system, but really it is. There's 32 brick and mortar American job centers spread across the state, so pretty much every community has one or has one nearby. And those centers are places where you can go in as an employee, as a worker, as someone who's looking for a job, and get support for anything you need to get into the workforce. So that includes supportive services, things like transportation, childcare, utility assistance, and even paying for the training, paying for degrees themselves. So, anywhere where you're working, apprenticeship is tied directly into that workforce system. It's, the Department of Labor, we oversee those job centers. So there's a lot of resources you can get through the community. I will say transportation, that's the biggest barrier we hear, regardless of the industry, regardless of the opportunity, is getting to the job site. And as lovely as the supportive services, wraparound services can be, the state cannot buy cars for everyone who wants to work. So sometimes we have to get creative and think about different opportunities, different apprenticeships, different roles that are going to be able to meet you where you are, put some money in your pocket for a couple of years, and then maybe that's when you can advance into something that's going to require you to go travel and be in different areas. So it is like a little bit of an art rather than a science, but the support is definitely there to solve the financial part of the problem for a lot of people in Maryland.
I appreciate the way you put that, Logan. Like it's an art rather than a science, right? Like there's all of these supports out there, and the supports that you all have in Washington County may look a little different than what's in Prince George's, may look a little different than what's in Wacomico or somewhere else. And so making sure that you understand the services and supports that are available through your community, in addition to the state level supports, is really helpful. And so I think, especially Logan, as you mentioned, directing folks to the American Job Centers as a place for those wraparound services and supports is fantastic. You said they are one of the best kept secrets, in addition to the work that the school systems are providing through a number of mechanisms to make sure that young people have access to jobs. And I appreciate, Amy, even you pointing out the fact that, you know, one of the benefits of this teacher apprenticeship work is that high school students have access to elementary schools and middle schools right in their backyard, oftentimes that are in, you know, sometimes even on the same campus, if not within just walking distance. And so we are going to help to address perhaps one of those major barriers of participating in apprenticeship, registered or youth, through the teacher apprenticeship by providing opportunities for young people right there in their community that they can access, perhaps without the need for, you know, a vehicle, or a bus or what have you. And so thank you all for that. I recognize that we are over time. Amy and Gary, we didn't get a chance to hear from you yet in terms of, you know, what's your vision for the future? So if you guys just want to share in a few words, you know, what's your hope or vision for teacher apprenticeships in Maryland over the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm going to echo what Tracy said, right? Respect for the profession, excitement about the profession. It is a profession, right? It's not a babysitting service. You know, it's not a holding cell. It is a profession. And what I envision and what I would love to see is a model where we have cohorts of students coming through who are trained by us, who are trained by our best teachers to become the best teachers. And who are supported for 5 years in the classroom, earning this experience to really become craftsmen in education of the teaching craft, because like everything else, it is an art and science. You have to have something to be a teacher in addition to that content knowledge. And so I would be so thrilled to see 20, 30, 50, 100 students come out of Prince George's County Public Schools, graduating every year into this apprenticeship program and coming back. And coming back excited, experienced educators when they begin as a first-year teacher.
I agree. I'm just going to add that I'm hopeful that there will be adults in our community that missed an opportunity as well, that'll mix into that cohort, because, you know, as a community where 22% have a bachelor's degree, we know that there are a lot of adults that we think would make excellent teachers, but it's not realistic with where they're at in their stage of life that going back to school full time is a real possibility. So, you know, we see this as an opportunity for those that need an income, can work with us as paraprofessionals and get those requirements needed to become a certified teacher. And so that's our hope as well.
Great. Thank you all so very much for your time today and sharing your wisdom and your resources and your vision for teacher apprenticeship here in the state of Maryland. I think everyone who attended and those who will even listen later will just greatly benefit from what you all share today. Even as we sit here and we talk about the power of a teacher, it doesn't matter what profession you're in. You know, I think Amy might have said earlier, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, a doctor, a lawyer, you know, IT professional, like everyone can think back to that teacher that had an impact and made a difference in their lives. And it's just a great opportunity for our young people to be that for someone else. Not only to think about as they're about to graduate from high school, the teacher that's made the greatest impact on them, but, you know, how can they impact and make a difference in the next generation? So just thank you all for your time. And we look forward to continuing this conversation as we go into the fall. And we are going to work towards launching our teacher apprenticeship program here in the state of Maryland as soon as we possibly can. So thank you all so very much and have a great rest of your day.